Hello everybody and welcome back. It is good to talk to all of you again today, and in today's ship review we are looking at Japanese Tier 8 tech tree cruiser, the Mogami, or otherwise known as the Japanese flamethrower indeed. Alright, so what we're going to do in this review is take a look at the port view. I'm going to sort of give you some of the detailed information about this particular ship. Then I'm going to take her into battle, and, well, you're going to see how the ship performs. Although, for this ship review in particular, I'm trying something a little bit different with the, the battles. I'm not going to try to show the best battle. I'm just going to show a battle where I think the ship performs the way that she ideally would perform. So, hopefully that might help give you some pointers about this particular ship. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Mogami first from the port view. Survivability-wise, the first thing we want to look at is really her armor profile. Yeah, if you look at her HP, 39,100 compared to Otago, which is a little bit more, 40,000 compared to New Orleans. Mogami has more, right? So her HP pool's okay, kind of in line with a lot of the other cruisers right now, currently at Tier 8. Certain ships like the Kudasov, they have a bit more. Other ships might have less. Hipper has quite a bit more, but Hipper has, of course, her flaws as well. If you, of course, look at something like the Edinburgh, quite a bit less, right? So Mogami's HP pool, 39,100, sort of right in there with everybody else. All right, but let's take a look at armor. So this is Mogami's armor profile. Now, the first thing I got to point out is she's actually got torpedo bulges. Yeah, that doesn't sound like anything I should be super excited about, but when you look at the other Tier 8 cruisers, not a lot of them have torpedo bulges. So the fact that she's got them means that she actually has pretty decent torpedo damage reduction. With damage control modification 1, 18%. Now, of course, that doesn't mean go out and go ahead and try to take as many torpedoes as you can. Well, but at least it does provide a little bit of damage mitigation. Aside from that, other notable things, of course, is her armor profile. Now, her armor profile is pretty cool. I mean, this is the Citadel armor. Now, you'll notice that it does stick out of the waterline, and that means that if you show broadside, you are going to be in trouble. So, with the Mogami, don't show broadside. It's very, very dangerous. Although, one interesting thing to note, if you look under the turrets, the underwater Citadel belt here is 140 millimeters. And at the front, it's 140 millimeters. And these two pieces of armor are actually thicker than the main belt. The main belt, only 100 millimeters. So, if you're cruiser on cruiser, angling might be key. And against battleships, just don't show broadside. You're not going to have a good day if you do that. One other thing, little bit interesting, is that Mogami is not, I would say, excellent against 155 HE, but she has a section. Kind of neat. There's a section right here, the, well, I'm not going to call this the superstructure belt armor-ish area, but it's the armor belt. It's a little weird. It's this piece up here, and it's right under the superstructure and actually above this piece over here, and this piece is actually 30 millimeters thick. Now, why is that significant, you ask? Well, if you're dealing with like 152 to 155 millimeter armed ships, and they hit you on this piece of the armor belt, if they don't have IFHE, they actually aren't able to actually penetrate. So kind of a quirk about this particular arm profile. Nothing really special, obviously. I mean, it's just something that is unique to her. If you look at something like Otago, you'll notice that she has the Citadel belt, and then 25 millimeters, and then superstructure. And also Mogami superstructure is kind of tiny too, right? So kind of a neat thing. Might offer you a touch bit more protection. Okay, so moving on from survivability, and the main thing that most people talk about when it comes to Mogami are the guns. And the guns are the things that have been changed sort of recently. Mostly, the 155 guns has now improved turret traverse, which definitely makes the 155 Mogami the Flammenwerfer setup. Unfortunately, since she's not German, I can't really do the Hans joke. Although, I guess if you convert it into something Japanese, it would sound like, HANSU, get the Mogami? Okay, alright, yeah. Anyways, 155's very, very good at throwing out a lot of HE shells and setting fires. That's what this weapon's specialty is. Take a look at the guns. You'll notice rate of fire. Whoa, my mouse just went crazy there. Reload time, 10 seconds. Very, very good there compared to 203s, which have a longer reload time. So a lot of shells that you spit out at a pretty fast pace. So if you're running up against battleships, destroyers, pretty effective weapon set. 180-degree turn time now with Expert Marksman, 31.6 seconds. A huge improvement over what she was before, where she was, the base range was like 50-something seconds. It's way better now. Max dispersion is good at 15.7 kilometers. It's cruisers, so their dispersions tend to be quite nice. Max HE shell damage, 2,600. And of course, you want to take IFHE on the Mogami. Chance of fire goes down. Even with Demo Expert, you still have 9%, which is not terrible. But the IFHE really helps, because if you run into Tier 9 or Tier 10 battleships, then with IFHE, the 155s can at least penetrate through the bow armor. Now, in the event that you have a low points captain, where you don't have IFHE yet, well, in that case, you have to be a little bit more selective with your shots. So against Tier 8, 9, 10 battleships, you're really going to have to aim for those superstructure hits and really try to get damage off of that. However, 155mm guns do have an interesting effect on the lower tier battleships, so tiers, essentially tier 6 and tier 7, with their 25mm bow armor. The 155s have just enough penetration to penetrate bow armor of those battleships. With 152s, you won't be able to. Alright, now one other thing you might notice is that the 155s have relatively high initial shell velocity. If you compare it to the 203s, which I will go to right now, you'll notice that the shell velocity for the 155s is quite a bit higher. However, when you actually test them out in game, the actual shell travel speeds in game are not all that different from each other. So in terms of shooting at max range, they're pretty comparable. Now the 203s are the alternative option, and right now most people would argue that the 155s now are superior. And yeah, I can agree with that. However, the 155s do have their flaws as well. And the 203s, well, they're better in this front. So the 203's advantage is basically this. The HE shells individually do more damage, and the chance of fires is that much higher. In terms of your rate of fire, it's generally a bit slower. However, turret traverse is faster. But that is everything you can only see in game. Now, if you actually take a look, there's something quite interesting about these two gun sets. The 203s have significantly better gun arcs. So if you turn your ship a certain amount, you can bring all of your guns forward. Now, for the 203s, it's 35 degrees, and you can get all of your guns, and that's forward, compared to 45 degrees with the 155s. Now, you might wonder, why does that matter? Well, here's why. At 45 degree angle, you're really exposing that very vulnerable broadside, and at that angle, auto bounce doesn't really come into effect at all. And that's where you can potentially get deleted, take huge amounts of citadel hits, so on and so forth. With the 203s, you can get all of your guns into action, and you actually have some auto bounce potential there. So, with the Mogami, the gun sets really are a choice based on individual playstyle. If you're somebody who is okay maybe with, let's say, hiding behind islands a little bit more, and maybe not so much trying to kite away from stuff, then, in that case, 155s would probably work really well. If you are somebody who prefers more of a kiting playstyle, then the 203s are probably going to fit you a little bit better. I'm not going to outright say one is superior to the other, although I know, the 155s have pretty significant advantages, and it is the gun set that I'm going to use for the battle example. But the 203s are not something I would outright rule out. One other thing, and the other reason why I say that the 203s are better at kiting away, is that when you are actually running away, they have better rear arcs as well compared to the 155s. And by the way, I will throw both of those graphics up, and you can tell that there's quite a bit of difference there. On the left, you see the 155 arcs. On the right, you will see the 203 arcs. Take a look. Notice that they're quite different. Now, there is actually some synergy between the main battery arcs and the torpedo arcs. If you take a look at the torpedo arcs, you'll notice that the Mogami has rearward-facing torpedo arcs. Now, if you're playing a Mogami, and this is really, really important, generally speaking, do not try and force a torpedo launch in a Mogami, right? So don't just be like, oh, I really want to get my torpedoes off, let me go turn broadside, because you're likely to get deleted if you do that. What you want to do with the Mogami's torpedoes is really, as you're trying to get away, you drop torpedoes. They're in a way to let enemy ships to run into your torpedoes, essentially, and you're denying them an area that they can go to. That's really what the torpedoes are for. Now, the Mogami's torpedoes they're quad launchers. You have 2 of them per side, so 8 torpedoes per launch. 10-kilometer range, so that's quite nice. Torpedo speed is 62 knots, which isn't terrible. And they do pack a punch at 17,233 damage. Torpedo detectability is also alright at 1.6 kilometers. AA defense. It's a Japanese cruiser. Why am I talking about AA? AA defense, not all that good. You kind of maybe want to consider defensive fire, maybe, to help yourself out. Catapult fighters help as well. Maneuverability is a really, really interesting one, because there's 2 ways to build Mogami. One is concealment and one is hyper maneuverability. Now, if you want to go maneuverability, get both the rudder shift modules, and you can get your rudder shift down to 3.4 seconds. Like, woohoo, destroyer levels of rudder shift. Now, I personally prefer this, because even when I'm playing 155s, I want to be able to get back into a safe angle quickly. So, this rudder shift helps. Although, if I do offer this particular setup, concealment's a little bit worse. 10.3 kilometer surface detectability means I can't really stealth torp. But then again, considering what I said earlier about torpedoes, that they're more for you as you're retreating to throw torpedoes, stealth torpedo maybe not as important. So my current recommendation, go with the rudder shift modules, much, much better. One final thing, maximum speed. Mogami is fast cruiser. So make sure you exploit that speed. You get into positions and then back away from positions quickly. Definitely, speed is very, very helpful. All right, aside from that, if we're talking about these upgrades, so again, like I said, get the 2 rudder shift, get damage control system mod 1, get aiming systems mod 1, get main armament mod 1. That's what you're probably going to opt for. In terms of consumables, you can choose between either defensive fire or hydroacoustic. I mean, that's really up to you. I personally always prefer to run AA, but hey, very good argument to be made for hydroacoustic as well. And finally, captain skills. Oh, if only I could find a captain with the name HANSU. It'd be so much funnier. Anyways, okay. So, captain skills, lots of different choices. Currently, the setup that I'm using for 155s is basically as follows. I have priority target on 1, then I go with expert marksman. Again, you still want to maybe have that extra bit of turret traverse. Without it, faster than before, could always use that a little bit more. Then you get demo expert, and then you get IFHE. Alternatively, you can always go priority target, adrenaline rush, demolition expert, and IFHE. That's always a viable alternative. Once you get through those first 10 skills, you might want to consider things like concealment expert. You want to consider things like last stand, maybe even direction center for catapult aircraft. A lot of still sort of customization that you can do. You can tailor it to your own play style. All right. So that's it from the port view. Let's take a look at how she performs in battle. And so here we are on Shatter. Now, Shatter is a map. Not a huge fan of the map, but it does at times work in a Mogami. Now, areas like the A cap, for example, there's quite a few islands that you can take cover behind. And with the 155 setup, it's not a bad idea to pick a nice friendly island, sit behind it, and fling some HE at stuff that are coming into the A cap. In this particular battle, there's actually enemy CV. While that's not exactly one of the most common things out there these days, a lot of battles you won't have CVs, but I'm glad that I brought defensive fire and, of course, the catapult fighters, although the CV in this entire battle didn't come anywhere near me at all. So, oh well. But at the early stages of the battle, I'm looking at the mini-map and, well, the enemy team isn't coming over here at all. And so, got to change positions, got to try to line up for a better shot maybe at the B cap. Not a huge fan of the sea cap in the Mogami, mostly because sea cap, well, a lot of really tall islands over there, and they have a tendency of, well, blocking all of your shots. So, not a huge fan of sea. Generally try to avoid it. But in this particular battle, no choice. Have to go towards that direction if I actually want to get any kind of damage in. Now, the 155 Mogami, nice rapid fire guns, now with the improved turret traverse, does make for a pretty scary destroyer killer. So, enemy destroyers are viable targets, assuming you can get them into your sights. On this particular map, well, DDs do have a lot of cover, and as you can tell, I'm trying, but that destroyer is avoiding me with everything it's got, so gotta take some shots at the enemy New Orleans. Now, I know because I have IFHE equipped, if I hit the New Orleans, I'm likely to get some damage there. Although in this kind of position where I can't really see him and I'm sort of lobbing shots over, well, sometimes I can't really hit that many, right? So looking at the minimap again at this particular time, I'm noticing that the enemy does seem to have some ships over at the sea cap, but two of their battleships are coming down towards the B area. So I've just taken a shot at that New Orleans and I've actually hit. So I figured it might be a good idea to actually use this big island over here, right now to my right. Use this island as cover, park kind of broadside, bring all of my guns to bear, and just fling some HE at those two somewhat stationary battleships. At least that should allow me to rack up some fire damage, maybe some HE damage. So should do okay. So I'm trying to set up here. Now remember, with the 155s, the gun arcs aren't all that good. So sometimes when you get all 5 guns out, you're really not in a very angled state. So you really need some kind of hard cover to prevent you from just getting absolutely wrecked. So first shot out towards the Iowa. Iowa is coming around in so many 155mm shells, hitting the Iowa, and there is my first fire. I actually don't, you'll see in this battle, I don't use my guns as much as I would have liked. Typically, with the 155s, that's pretty much the gun set that you're using all the time. But, like I said, yeah, get bumped massively out of position, and by the time I'm able to get off the North Carolina and try to set up again, while the two enemy battleships have they've gotten into more difficult positions. So, for example, as you can tell, the Iowa's already starting to back away, and the Kurfürst is, yeah, I don't know. Enemy Kurfürst, I don't know what he's doing here. We had a lower HP Kurfürst. He's at a full HP Kurfürst. And he opted to go for the ram. So, unfortunately, that takes away a lot of my potential damage as well. Darn it. I was hoping to do some more burning with the Mogami. Alright, so continue to shoot at the Iowa, but, Iowa disappears behind the island. So, North Carolina is pushing up, taking a look at the map. Aside from that Iowa, there's nothing really else at B, so at this particular time, I'm thinking probably a good idea to make a push onto the B cap, take that cap for the team, and then we're going to have a even bigger advantage over this enemy team. Also thinking the North Carolina might be there to potentially hold the Iowa off. Iowa still behind the island, looks like he's coming forward. Not really sure if he's going to push up or not. Maybe he's just inching forward. Okay, looks like he's starting to make some kind of move here. Alright, so some decisions to be made here. One, I could push into the Iowa, or two, I could actually try to get away. And then I ended up making a decision. I wasn't all too happy with it. I mean, I really should have, I think, at this particular time, I really should have maybe held back a little bit more, and then just flung some more HE. But circumstances sometimes, well, don't let us do that. I mean, I'm in a much more narrow sort of environment, and the Iowa is pushing in. So figured, might as well be aggressive, support the North Carolina to the best of my ability, and who knows, maybe as they're engaging, I can do a drive-by, dump some torpedoes or something, and kill the Iowa that way. Yeah, at least that's the theory, right? As you can tell, IFHE doing some marvelous work, penning the bows of the Iowa, doing some pretty decent damage there. Look at that, another pen through the bow. So IFHE, very, very important, especially when you're dealing with the higher tier battleships. North Carolina now. Well, he's going to bow in towards the Iowa, which means that the Iowa knows that the ram is coming, which means I know I'm the one that's going to get shot at. So look at the way I'm trying to, sort of angle myself. I'm trying to put myself in a position where, yeah, the Iowa can get some penetration damage, but he is going to auto bounce off of my belt armor, and not get any citadel damage in there. So in that case, I was able to mitigate the damage to about 8,000, which was pretty okay. But, you know, the ram happens, and so no more damage to be had there. See a low HP New Orleans, pop some HE in that direction, and there we go. There we go, I secured my first kill. Woohoo! So far, not doing too badly. I mean, 40,000 damage, not all that great, not terrible either. See an enemy Bismarck that's been hiding behind that island. Yeah, don't ask me what the enemy team was doing. Not really sure. I mean, enemy teams sometimes do really potato-y things. That, or, you know, the chat that happened at the beginning of the battle really threw them all for a loop, and they're just all having a moment right now or something. I don't know. But yeah, the enemy team just, I don't know what they're doing during this battle. Okay, so Bismarck comes out. I don't really want to go in a straight up fight with that Bismarck, especially since our battleship's on the other side of the island, which means if he came out and I was there, I would be the main target, so don't want to do that. So instead, use this island as cover, turn myself around, and get into that kiting, retreating position. And this is where IJN cruisers really do, I think, shine. They're very good at disrupting pushes. They're very good at holding off a push, because what they can do is, as they're falling back and flinging crazy amounts of HE with their HE fire chance at you, and doing some good HE damage as well on top of that, they have these very nice rearward torpedo arcs. And hey, you get hit by IJN torpedoes, you know it, they hurt. So in this case, what I'm predicting is that, you know, based on the distribution of my forces and enemy forces, Bismarck not likely to really head towards the C direction, might be more happy to come towards A, hence why I moved this way to try to cut him off. And you can tell I preemptively dumped sort of torpedoes into where I think that Bismarck, if he turns towards the A cap, he might intersect with those torpedoes. So fired off a bunch of torpedoes, and now, once again, don't want to go into head-on fight with a battleship, so using the island as cover, trying to get myself into another good position to continue throwing torpedoes and continue to use my guns. Score on the torpedoes, managed to clip the bow, and there is a flooding. And flooding is very good because you know the enemy Bismarck is definitely going to repair that flooding. So, immediately, considering where the position of the Bismarck is and where I think he might go, I put another salvo of torpedoes into the water. And as you see, again, I'm not firing at the prediction line. I'm trying to guess that if I was the Bismarck player, how would I be playing this? Which gaps would I go for? Which direction would I go to if I'm trying to reach a certain objective? In this case, the A cap. So my guess is he's not really going to be continuing his full speed rush the direction that he was last seen, but he probably would have turned and would have probably tried to angle into A. So at least that was my theory, and not too long after, well, there you go. You see that turn. He's trying to cut in inside the island, and he's trying to get in and get towards the A cap. So of course, these torpedoes that I launch, well, you know, even though I'm not going to do massive amounts of damage, I am going to hit him with another one of these on the bow. There is another flooding, and this time the Bismarck is going to take flooding damage. Normally, as Mogamis are falling back, you also want to be using your guns and lighting fires. Although with the 155s, do be cautious when you do that, because unlike the 203s, where you have a very good rear arc with your guns, the 155s on the Mogami, they don't have such good rear arcs, although the rear arc is better than the forward arc. You're still going to have to show a little bit too much side, is my take on it. So again, you know, ideally I just want to use my torpedoes and avoid a full-on gunfight until I can get into a position where I know I'll have an advantage. So once again, I'm going to try to get myself into a good place, which is, again, in a place where the Bismarck won't be able to bring all of his guns to bear. And I'm going to pop out on him, and I'm going to start firing. Alright, so using this island as cover, first things first, torpedoes, because, again, Bismarck hasn't spotted me, and then go to my guns. And with these 155s, there is one thing that you have to say, though. When you hit the enemy ships, you hit them hard, and you do some really serious damage. I mean, there you go. That alone was pretty close to, I think, 6,000 damage there on that salvo. Second salvo there, and, oh, yeah, you can definitely tell. Bismarck's feeling that pain there. Yep, 400 HP left. My torpedoes aren't even going to get there before my guns finish him off. And there we go. That is another kill. And that's pretty much this battle. I mean, I didn't do anything spectacular. I just sort of did my job. I spammed HE and tried to set some fires when I could. I pushed when I had to push. I defended when I had to defend. I defended with my torpedoes, with my guns, kiting away in that sort of playstyle. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the Mogami. As long as you play it correctly, results like this should not be uncommon. She's a very, very good ship. You know, if you choose to go for the 155s, I mean, she has fantastic firepower with those guns, and you should really be able to rack up that damage. I mean, even with the 203s, if you play those correctly, you can also do the same thing. It really is up to you, the individual, to get a hang of the ship. Anyways, the results screen, as you can tell, yeah, not too bad. 232,000 credits. I think taking away all the deductions, I had like 130,000 profit. Base experience, almost 1,600. In this particular battle, I would have been third on the team, which is acceptable. In terms of damage, quite well balanced. 42,000 damage from HE, 15,000 fire, 33,000 from flooding, 17,000 from torpedoes. Oh, and there we go, 124,000. There we go. Sort of remember that number. And yeah, that's pretty much the Mogami. She's a much improved version compared to her before. The 155 buff really does make a huge difference. So yeah, if you're thinking about the ship, either getting it back or picking it up, yeah, you should definitely do it. She's a very, very good ship, and you should be able to get many good battles and many good results with her. One final thing, many thanks to my patrons for their amazing support. You guys rock. And of course, yeah, you guys do kind of vote for the ship reviews. So, you know, thank you this time for picking a ship that wasn't torturous. Still trying to avoid that Bogue review. I'm trying everything possible to avoid that particular ship. Anyways, folks, take care. Have yourselves a very, very good one. Hope you enjoyed this particular ship review on the Mogami. Take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to all of you again next time.